Now, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a 1974 grindhouse horror movie that tells the story of how an idyllic summer road trip turns into a nightmare when a group of youngsters come face to face with a family of psychopathic cannibals. And here are 5 reasons you should watch this movie. Reason number 1, teenagers.
This heat is just driving me crazy.
So teenagers Kurt, Pam, Jerry, Sally, and Franklin are driving down to Texas town to visit Sally and Franklin's family's old slaughterhouse. The goal was to have a nice little drive, check out some sights, and have a little intimate evening by visiting property once owned by their family.
My granddaddy's buried here. Can we find out if anything happened to him?
But little did they know that their plans would change as they meet a stranger going in the same direction.
Hitchhiker.
Should we pick him up?
Reason number 2, Hitchhiker. So the crew come across a guy who's looking to hitch a ride. And though he's not explicitly named, the audience will come to know him as Nubens. Nubens is an eccentric dude who enjoys photography and talking about life on the slaughterhouse farm.
They take the head and they boil it, except for the tongue. And they scrape all the flesh away from the bone.
But when he and Franklin start to bond, the two realize that their families are pretty similar as they come from the same sort of familial occupation.
I was at the slaughterhouse.
I got an uncle that works at a slaughterhouse.
But things quickly escalate when Nubens start to scare the teens with his vivid photos of mutilated animals and even practice of the occult.
I was the killer.
Damn.
Let me see him.
But Nubens then attacked Franklin with a razor, cutting both Franklin and then himself. And he is then kicked out of their vehicle as they continue their drive. But Nubens then smears blood on their van and warns them of their impending doom. Reason number 3, Leatherface. And when the teenagers arrive at their destination, they start to look around and quickly notice that there's a lot of animal bones and carcasses. And while it's pretty normal to see that at a slaughterhouse, things take a turn for the worse when Kurt walks into what looks like to be an abandoned house and is attacked with a sledgehammer by a hulking masked man. Pam attempts to look for Kurt. She is then chased and hoisted onto a meat hook by the same masked man that bludgeoned Kurt. This ultimately leads Jerry to look for them both, and that masked man then bludgeons Jerry and starts to mutilate the bodies of the rest of the victims with a chainsaw. That man is known as Leatherface. Reason number 4, the family. With only Sally and Franklin left, as nightfall occurs, they get worried and try to look for their friends. But Franklin is attacked by Leatherface when he is chopped up by Leatherface's chainsaw. Leaving only Sally as the sole survivor, she runs for her life and goes to find solace at a gas station where they stopped off earlier. But to her surprise, Sally is attacked and then taken hostage by the store's owner. She soon finds herself in the home of the store owner, the hitchhiker, the masked Leatherface, and their patriarch known as Grandpa.
You like this, Dave?
Now with nowhere to go and no one to turn to, Sally must survive and fight to stay alive, or else fall prey at the hands of the Slaughter family. Reason number 5, Massacre. Now this movie, by most people's account, is very bloody, and I've seen people say that this movie is too scary to watch for its brutal violence and sadistic nature. However, you would be surprised that though this movie is perceived as gory, it's not really bloody at all. I mean, filmmaker Tobe Hooper's intention was to make a movie that was a PG film, but his use of implied violence by the way of sound, cinematography, and audience psychology was done so well that the movie kept being sent back to him with an X rating. Now, X ratings back in the 70s was reserved for porn and ultra-graphic depictions of violence. And though the Texas Chainsaw Massacre had no sex scenes and practically no blood and no explicit violent acts, after numerous resubmissions to the MPAA, it finally got an R rating. So as a viewer, when you watch this movie, you are merely filling in the gaps of what's happening. And this is what makes the Texas Chainsaw Massacre a timeless classic. Now in the end, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is probably the greatest horror movie ever made. I mean, this movie's intended purpose was to serve as a dark comedy, and no one got the joke. I mean, this isn't a bad thing. This is Tobe Hooper and his crew creating lightning in a bottle. Now during this original run, it was the Terrifier of its day. It was the Art the Clown, but better. Now, with Terrifier, we go into knowing that we are getting an actual movie. Most people at the time thought that they were watching a snuff film, and this made many of the believers walk out of the theater, vomit, and protest against what they believed to be too violent for public showing. They believed that the people dying on camera were true depictions of real-life deaths. This was probably due to the film's opening monologue that sells this as a historic event. But even people who watch this with a modern-day lens have felt that this movie was too violent to watch. And that is the magic of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, a movie I highly recommend. And until next time, when CEDtalks horror.